On September 13, 1985, Super Mario Bros. First appeared on store shelves in Japan. It was the largest home video game ever released at the time. That record didn't last long, but the game's legacy has. Over 40 years later, it's still a favorite for millions and widely regarded as the most important video game ever made.
Family コンピューター登場。2人で楽しめるマリオブラザーズなど10種類。家族揃ってファミリーコンピューター。
Super Mario Bros. Officially arrived on September 13, 1985. But for the star of the game, Mario, it was just another day on the job. He had already appeared in Nintendo's games going back to 1981 with Donkey Kong. That game was also a watershed moment for Nintendo, transforming the company from a Japanese also-ran to an international success. Its creator, Shigeru Miyamoto, became a top figure within Nintendo, producing or directing literally dozens of hit games afterwards. Mario would soon rival Pac-Man in popularity, branching into merchandising, a Saturday morning cartoon show, and countless games starring him. While that rise began with Donkey Kong, Miyamoto had always intended Mario to be a recurring star. From the moment Mario was first on the drawing board, then named Mr. Video, Miyamoto took a liking to him and thought this little guy could be a utility player in almost any kind of game. That plan took shape in Mario Bros., a game that expanded on the ideas from Donkey Kong. Mario and his brother Luigi bounced through underground arenas, knocking out enemies and grabbing coins. His job description also changed, from a carpenter to a plumber. Released in arcades and on Game & Watch in 1983, Mario Bros. Also appeared at home. That same year, Nintendo entered the TV game market with the family computer. Nintendo could produce multiple games at once, experiment with new ideas, and deliver them straight to consumers. Affordable hardware and fun software helped the family computer outsell its early rivals. When the system was still on the drawing board, President Hiroshi Yamauchi had one clear directive. The family computer had to lead the industry for at least 3 years. The first year established Nintendo's presence. The second brought more games, some with Mario in unexpected roles. Bigger and better games were lined up for 1985, but time was running out. As games grew more advanced, cartridge memory had to expand. Though later disproven, engineers at Nintendo in 1983 thought the maximum family computer cartridge size was 320 kilobits. By 1984, games were often 192 kilobits, some a little larger. As memory increased, so did the price. In July 1983, family computer cartridges, cassettes as they were called in Japan, sold for 3,800 yen. By October 1984, they started at 4,500 yen and only went higher. Newer, more powerful systems would also eventually make the family computer obsolete. The walls on both sides, technology and affordability, were closing in. To counter this, Nintendo developed an add-on device to extend the life of the family computer, improve the games, and cut costs. The disk system, a magnetic disk drive that attached to the cartridge slot. The interface used rewritable disk cards that held 896 kilobits, almost 3 times the assumed cartridge limit, and sold for just 2,500 yen. Players could also overwrite discs with new games for just 500 yen and save their progress or high scores forever. Development began in late 1984, but the disk system wouldn't be ready until 1986. In the meantime, Nintendo still had 1 more year to fill. Their solution? A grand finale for the cartridge format, starring their number 1 hero.
ファミリーコンピューターに夢の大冒険ゲームスーパーマリオブラザーズ
Early arcade games, including ones designed by Shigeru Miyamoto, were often constrained by technical limitations. These restrictions forced games into boxes that eventually became their own genres. Maze games, racing games, shooting games, jumping games, and so on. While Miyamoto had always intended to use Mario in as many games as possible, technical restrictions often forced him to put ideas on the back burner for next time. there were several hurdles that couldn't be overcome while designing Donkey Kong and Mario Brothers. The screen was locked in a static position. Characters were fixed to certain sizes, and the business model of arcade games, shorter sessions that required constantly inserting coins, kept games simple. Miyamoto had long envisioned Mario in what he called an athletic game. You'd be forgiven for assuming athletic simply meant physical exertion, but to Miyamoto, that term has a specific meaning. In the 1970s, adventure parks began to grow in popularity in Japan. The man responsible for the craze, Hiroki Isaka, coined the term field athletic for these parks, eventually shortened to just athletic. A standard field athletic course featured climbing walls, rope bridges, zip lines, monkey bars, shaking floorboards, and platforms that floated on water or were elevated above the ground. The goal was to complete the course as quickly as possible, while trying not to fall off the edge. The boom was so popular that by 1979, a board game version appeared. In 1984, Athletic Land for the MSX computer brought the concept to video games in its purest form. The craze later peaked with the TV program Takeshi's Castle. The term athletic game slowly caught on as video games with the goal of reaching the finish line while avoiding hazards and obstacles appeared more frequently. With the family computer, many of the barriers Miyamoto had faced were finally gone. Now, Miyamoto had the means to create a true athletic game, with Mario as the main character. Several key concepts from Mario Brothers were easily carried over: turtles, fireballs, pipes, and coins. Of the early athletic games Miyamoto drew inspiration from, Namco's Pac-Land left the biggest impression. Not only the gameplay, but for its use of color, especially the bright blue skies that filled the backgrounds. Nearly every game of the early 80s used black backdrops, but if Mario's stages were field athletic obstacle courses, they should look like they were outside. He took this inspiration further, designing underwater levels and lava-filled castles for his athletic game. The color contrasts give an immediate sense of place, making the world feel alive and varied in a way that arcade games rarely did. New ideas came quickly. Miyamoto designed Mario's sprite larger than before. From there, the reasoning behind his new size emerged. Special items would grant him superpowers, adding more intensity to the action. Power-ups wouldn't simply be handed out, but hidden in blocks. 3 core power-ups made it to the final version of the game. Magic mushrooms transformed Mario into Super Mario, twice the size he was before. Fire flowers let him throw fireballs. Both let Mario take 1 hit of damage, sending him back to his small size. Starmen gave short bursts of invincibility. There was also a 1-up mushroom that granted an extra life. Collecting 100 coins was another way to gain more lives. With Mario being super-powered, it didn't take long for the athletic game to receive its proper final title: Super Mario Brothers. The power-up items also defined the control scheme. With 2 action buttons on the family computer controller, more action was possible compared to the 1-button arcade setup. The D-pad moved Mario left and right. The A button made him jump. The B button made him shoot fireballs when powered up, and holding B made him run faster. This mechanic became known as the B-dash. Some platforms could only be reached with a running B-dash jump. Using both buttons together allowed Mario or Luigi to run at top speed, jump on enemies, or blast them away. As for the bad guys, they varied in design, difficulty, and behavior. Goombas are the easiest to defeat, just jump on them. Koopa Troopas descended from the shell creepers in Mario Brothers. One stomp sends them into their shells, which can then be kicked forward to knock out other enemies. Some Koopa Troopas jump, and some fly. Green ones wander off edges, while the red ones are smarter than that. Buzzy beetles are similar to Koopa Troopas, but immune to fireballs. Lakitu is a turtle who rides a magic cloud, tossing spiny eggs to the ground. Don't jump on the spinies' pointy tops. Piranha plants lurk in pipes. They are vulnerable to fireballs, though they stay hidden if Mario stands next to their pipe. Cheep Cheeps and bloopers are underwater dwellers, though Cheep Cheeps can sometimes find their way to land. Bullet bills fly across the screen. Podoboos are fireballs bouncing in lava inside castles. The Hammer Brothers are two turtles who throw hammers and charge forward. All of these elements created a fantasy world, taking cues from Japanese folklore and Alice in Wonderland. The end result led to a gigantic game compared to Donkey Kong, Mario Brothers, and other TV games at the time. 32 levels, divided into 8 worlds, with 4 levels in each. All of these concepts were sent to Miyamoto's right-hand man, Takashi Tezuka, who refined many designs and brought them to life on screen. Not every idea made the final cut. Concepts like Mario riding a cloud, a rocket, and even a dinosaur were abandoned. Still, there were more secrets. Some blocks contained vines that sent Mario skyward. Some pipes led to underground bonuses, or sent you to a completely different world. The only way to know was to try. All of it gave way to an entertaining and detailed backstory to the game. One day, the kingdom of the peaceful Mushroom Kingdom people was invaded by the Koopa, a tribe of turtles famous for their black magic. The quiet, peace-loving mushroom people were turned into mere stones, bricks, and even field horsehair plants. The Mushroom Kingdom fell into ruin. The only one who can undo the magic spell on the mushroom people and return them to their normal selves is the Princess Peach, the daughter of the Mushroom King. Unfortunately, she is presently in the hands of the great Koopa Turtle King. So are her 7 mushroom retainers. Mario, the hero of the story, hears about the mushroom people's plight and sets out on a quest to free the Mushroom Princess from the evil Koopa and restore the fallen kingdom of the mushroom people. Tying everything together was the sound and music. Composer Koji Kondo developed 4 main themes for Super Mario Bros. The overworld theme, Latin-inspired with calypso rhythms, fast-paced to match Mario's movement on screen. The underworld theme, written in 3/4 time. It's short, looping after just 11 seconds. The mix of short notes and long rests create tension and disorientation. The underwater theme, also in 3/4 time, resembling a waltz. This theme is slower and more relaxing, creating the sensation of floating underwater. The castle theme, faster and more frantic than the rest, with short, repetitive notes that heighten the nerves and emphasize the danger ahead. Other short jingles were included: invincibility, level clear, and game over. And if the timer dropped to 100, every stage's music doubled in speed, an urgent reminder to hurry up. The sound effects worked on 2 levels. Primarily, they alerted the player to different events without needing to divert attention from Mario. Secondarily, these often complemented the background music. Levels were designed so that running full speed would produce an extra musical layer. What began in late 1984 became finalized in mid-1985. A July shipping date was planned, just in time for summer vacation in Japan. But July came and went without a finished game. When Miyamoto spoke to the head of manufacturing about the delay, he was simply met with a reply of, "Oh well." After all, great games take time. By early August, everything was finally ready. A game with 32 levels, tons of secrets, and endless replay value. All just barely within the memory limits of the family computer at 320 kilobits. The retail price was set at 4,900 yen, one of the most expensive cartridges in 1985. When manufacturing began, it would not stop until the early 1990s. The date was official, September 13th, 1985, Super Mario Bros. A wonderful send-off to the cartridge format, and the largest family computer game at the time went out into the world to make history.
When you play the system with the most arcade hits, you're playing with power. The Nintendo Entertainment System.
When Super Mario Bros. First went on sale on September 13, 1985, the family computer was already the most popular TV game machine in Japan. Sales had been climbing month after month, but it was nothing compared to the second half of 1985. Nintendo advertised the game like any other title, but right from the start, Super Mario Bros. Sparked a boom unlike anything the industry had ever seen. Family Computer Magazine, Famimaga for short, which had only just begun publishing that summer, gave Super Mario Bros. In-depth coverage. Across several issues, the magazine showed every level in detail, along with pages of secrets and strategies. Video game magazines at the time weren't focused on critiques or review scores. They were more about providing as many screenshots and hints as possible. As a result, Super Mario Bros. Had no contemporary score whatsoever in Japan. For those who brought the game home in those first few weeks, word of mouth spread like wildfire. Family computer owners rushed to buy it, and people who didn't own the system ran out to get one, with Super Mario Bros. In hand. Famimaga was also one of the earliest outlets to track sales, compiling weekly and monthly bestseller lists based on retailers surveyed across the country. For the week ending September 15th, with only 3 days spent on the shelves, Super Mario Bros. Debuted at number 1. It held the top spot for months, only getting knocked off when The Legend of Zelda and other big games later arrived. But Mario didn't stay down for long, returning to the top spot again a few times in 1986. The craze was so intense that shops often posted signs saying Super Mario Bros. And even the family computer itself were sold out. Demand far outpaced supply. Miyamoto and his team immediately got to work on a sequel to keep the momentum going. Mario was already a familiar face. Going back to Donkey Kong, there had always been merchandise, things like toys, t-shirts, stickers. But this was different. Suddenly, Mario was everywhere. Licensed onto board games, instant ramen, pencil cases, manga, and even an animated film called The Great Mission to Rescue Princess Peach. Nintendo teamed up with Fuji Media to release soundtracks and VHS strategy videos. The radio show All Night Nippon had a segment on its program where on-air talents, including Game Freak's Satoshi Tajiri, played Super Mario Bros. Live on the air. The program also held a contest where fans could submit lyrics to the overworld theme, with the winner's version released as a single. That winner was Hiroko Taniyama with her song Go Go Mario. Later, All Night Nippon ran another contest that gave away a special edition of Super Mario Bros. Featuring talent from the show. Famimaga compiled all of its coverage into a book, Super Mario Bros., The Complete Strategy Guide. Released in October 1985, it sold over 600,000 copies, becoming the #1 best-selling book in all of Japan that year. By the end of 1985, Super Mario Bros. Had become the top-selling family computer game ever. In 1986, sales passed the 1 million mark, the first game in Japan to ever do so. When the Nintendo Disk System debuted on February 21st, 1986, Super Mario Bros. Was one of the featured titles, further boosting sales. On June 3rd, Super Mario Bros. 2 was released. The day before, the original Super Mario Bros. Sat at #1 on the gaming charts for the last time, though it stayed in the top 10 for quite a while. Even as late as 1988, with Super Mario Bros. 3 in the picture, the original game was still frequently seen in the top 20. The continued sales made Super Mario Bros. The best-selling family computer game of all time, with lifetime sales of 6,810,000. Of that, 580,000 came from the Disk System. 270,000 of those were rewrites. Not only was Super Mario Bros. The best-selling family computer game, it was also the best-selling video game in Japan overall, a record that lasted until it was outsold by Pokémon Red and Green. Counting only games sold as a single release, the record held until 2020, when Animal Crossing: New Horizons finally overtook the reigning champion of 35 years. For all its successes in Japan, this was only the beginning. The family computer was headed to America, with Super Mario Bros. Leading the way. In the United States, Donkey Kong had been just as popular as it was in Japan. Same with Game & Watch. Home versions of Nintendo's arcade hits sold well on the Atari 2600, Intellivision, and ColecoVision. There was clearly money to be made, and Nintendo stood to profit even more with its own machine. As soon as the family computer hit the streets of Japan, Nintendo was already planning to export it to the US, and eventually the world. There were a few false starts. Nintendo was a Japanese company trying to enter an American space. The market was dominated by Atari. Everyone else who tried to overtake them couldn't. As well, some stores and distributors inexplicably no longer wanted to be involved in video games anymore. All these barriers stood in the way as various models of an American family computer came and went without ever going on sale. Nintendo developed a new kind of arcade machine in the meantime, the VS system, essentially a coin-operated family computer. Games were interchangeable and a growing library from Japan was ready for import. Throughout 1984 and 85, Americans were playing many of the games they'd soon be playing at home. They just didn't know it yet. The American iteration of the family computer finally arrived on October 18, 1985, as the Nintendo Entertainment System. Super Mario Bros. Was one of 17 NES games Americans could buy in 1985. At the time, it was only available in the greater New York City area. Since Super Mario Bros. Wasn't even finished when Nintendo of America was readying the NES, the game was tacked on as a last-minute addition. Instead of Mario, the NES was centered around the robotic operating buddy, Rob for short. This toy tried to cash in on a craze in Japan that stemmed from the 1985 World Expo that was focused on robotics. The robot was a massive failure in Japan, and unsold stock was dumped on Nintendo of America. Giving it away for free seemed like the best option. After New York, Nintendo expanded to Los Angeles. Other major markets, Chicago, Detroit, and Pittsburgh, would soon follow, before eventually being available everywhere across America by the end of the year. Flying under the radar as one of the many games that suddenly appeared in stores, Super Mario Bros. Received only one review in 1986. Computer Entertainer magazine gave a score of 3.5 stars for the graphics and 4 stars for gameplay. The review called Super Mario Bros. A sheer delight, truly addictive, and a must-have on the NES that could take months to experience all the discoveries the game has inside. Along the way, VS Super Mario Bros. Appeared in arcades in early 1986. The arcade version was slightly different than the one on the NES. Some items and their locations were changed. A few levels from the Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2 were added. It became Nintendo's most popular VS title. 20,000 cabinets were in circulation and consistently bringing in money. It didn't take long for those in the arcade to realize that the same game could be enjoyed at home. By the time the NES was available in most major American cities, sales data was already being reported on back in Japan. Super Mario Bros. Was always at the top of the charts. With interest in the NES rising and Americans clamoring for Super Mario Bros., Nintendo of America made a move that would immortalize the game, system, and company for every kid who grew up in the 1980s by including the game for free with every NES in a new configuration. The price of the system was then reduced from $179 to $99. Rob the Robot was still around, but now was nothing but good memories. While Super Mario Bros. Was a great game that consumers would have bought separately, the bundled set gave a newcomer everything right out of the box. The lower price offered a great proposition of value, an arcade game included for free. Following the change, sales of the NES kicked into high gear. Nintendo was now the #1 video game company in America, and the center of the gaming universe moved from California to Kyoto. With a winning strategy in place, the NES went beyond the US to the UK, continental Europe, Mexico, and Australia, just to name a few places. With a larger user base, Nintendo started to publish materials on their own. The best-selling guide from Japan was translated into English and sold stateside. The official Nintendo Player's Guide offered similar strategies for Super Mario Bros. And every other NES game at the time. In 1987, a bi-monthly magazine, Nintendo Fun Club News, kicked off with Super Mario Bros. On the first page of the first issue. The successor publication, Nintendo Power, featured Super Mario Bros. 2 on the cover of its first issue. Other official publications also appeared in several nations in Europe and Latin America under the name Club Nintendo, which, despite the uniform title, were independently operated and customized for each nation. But it certainly didn't stop there. Mario Mania was even more intense outside of Japan, than it was in it. The merchandising was out of control. Nothing went without Mario and Luigi on it for your average Nintendo fan to enjoy. Including sales in Japan, Super Mario Bros. Sold just over 40 million units, setting a world record for the best-selling video game of all time. The record stood until Wii Sports, also a bundled game, moved past the 40 million mark in 2009. And that's just the first game. With the success of Super Mario Bros., it was only natural that there would be sequels and spin-offs. But the 1985 Super Mario Bros. Keeps coming back, time and again, proving that the original has the staying power to stand toe-to-toe with the newest releases decades later. The first of these arrived in 1986 on the NEC PC-88 as Super Mario Bros. Special. The game wasn't handled by Nintendo at all. It was programmed and published by Hudson Soft, who had a licensing deal to put some Nintendo games on home computers. This version was different. None of the stages matched the Nintendo original. The music was choppy, the graphics were low quality, and the screen didn't scroll. Each area was just a single fixed screen, with the next loading only when Mario reached the edge. The game is tough, but added difficulty doesn't always equal fun. A second version also came out for the Sharp X1 PC, and that one ran even slower. Still, it's an important piece of history that deserves to be remembered. Super Mario Bros. Came to Game & Watch. Even with a low-powered LCD tech, the game worked surprisingly well. All 8 worlds made it into this version, though Mario's abilities were simplified. Multiple versions were released from 1986 to 1988. In 2020, Nintendo released a full-color Game & Watch, featuring the real Super Mario Bros. And the Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2. In December 1986, Nintendo teamed up with Fuji Media for All Night Nippon Super Mario Bros., based on the late-night radio program All Night Nippon. It was a promotional tie-in for the show's 20th anniversary. A few thousand lucky listeners won copies of the Disk System game. This version mixed levels from the original Super Mario Bros. And the Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2, swapped in microphones and Fuji logos, and even featured the program's celebrity hosts, including Beat Takeshi, Tamori, and Kyon Kyon. Fan reaction was so strong that a second printing went on sale in 1987 at a premium price of 3,500 yen. In 1993, Super Mario Bros. 1, 2, and 3 were bundled together for the Super Famicom and Super NES as Super Mario All-Stars. The collection remade all of the games with 16-bit graphics and sound, save files, custom controls, and the biggest shock of all, Japan's Super Mario Bros. 2 finally came overseas, rebranded as The Lost Levels. The collection was re-released for the Wii in 2010. 1999 saw Super Mario Bros. Deluxe on the Game Boy Color. The original levels were intact, but new challenge modes tasked players to find 5 red coins or a hidden Yoshi egg in each level. 2 players could link up with a cable to race each other, while solo you could race against Boo. The Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2 was included, unlocked after reaching 300,000 points. For the family computer's 20th anniversary, Nintendo released the Famicom Mini series on Game Boy Advance, beginning in 2004. Super Mario Bros. Was one of 32 reissued titles. These games had no enhancements. The point was to play them exactly as they originally were. But the packaging was special. In Japan, each game came in a clear plastic case with a scale-sized replica box and manual. Versions elsewhere used the classic NES box art. The mid-2000s saw a classic gaming revival, with Virtual Console leading the way. The service offered hundreds of classic games, not just Nintendo titles, but also Sega Genesis and TurboGrafx-16. In Japan, Super Mario Bros. Was available on day 1 in 2006. In the US, it went on sale on Christmas Day, the most perfect day possible. In other regions, it arrived on January 5th, 2007, which for the Orthodox Church is 12th night. Still very fitting. The game appeared again on Virtual Console for 3DS and Wii U, and the NES Classic Mini. When those were retired and replaced by the Switch and Nintendo Online Classics, Super Mario Bros. Was once again among the first batch of titles in 2018. Even the arcade VS Super Mario Bros. Saw a re-release through the Arcade Archives series. In 2020, Nintendo introduced something totally new, Super Mario Bros. 35, a special online battle game celebrating the 35th anniversary, where 35 players competed simultaneously. You played the standard Mario stages, but every enemy you stomped on was sent to another player's screen. Levels were random, coins could buy power-ups, and only one player could be the last Mario standing. It was free to download, but sadly was only available from October 1st, 2020 until March 31st, 2021. With the Switch 2 being backwards compatible and inheriting online classics, we may have finally seen the last re-releases. There doesn't seem to be any new methods to re-release what everyone already automatically has. At least for now, Super Mario Bros. And all our other favorites from the 80s and 90s have a safe home on modern hardware forever.
See you again.
Super Mario Bros. Is loaded with secrets. These were part of the draw to the game way back in 1985. Whether to prove something crazy you heard on the playground was actually true, or just messing around to see what's hiding in the game for yourself. There's so much fun to discover that keeps Super Mario Bros. Fresh and fun for a long time. Some of the secrets were encouraged by Nintendo and were mentioned in the manual or taught to you while experimenting with the game. Things like 10 coins in a block, knocking out a line of enemies for a 1-up, or hitting the flagpole with the timer ending in 1, 3, or 6 to get that specific number of fireworks would technically qualify as game secrets, though 40 years later, it feels like common knowledge. Here are some of the more interesting things you'll find in Super Mario Bros. Some are well known, and others not so much. When you rescue Princess Toadstool, she gives her thanks, but also a special code. You can press the B button to select a world from the title screen. The second time around also replaces all Goombas with Buzzy Beetles, raising the difficulty, but also allowing for more potential points and 1-ups. However, if you haven't reached the princess yet and get a game over, you can continue on the world where you left off. Hold down the A button when you see Game Over, then press Start at the title screen, and you're back in the game. As far as button commands go, did you know that Luigi cannot pause the game? That's because the family computer only has Start and Select on controller 1. The second controller has space for the microphone instead. So there was never a button to program anything to, and this carried over to the NES without any changes. So if you're playing a 2-player game, you have to ask player 1 to help you out if you need to stop and scratch your nose. If you want to be a real jag-off to your little brother, hit the pause button while Luigi is in mid-air. Pausing the game will stop his momentum, which can cause a lot of cheap falls. My cousin did this to me once, and we haven't spoken since. Warp zones are arguably the most famous cheat in the game. There are only 3, but for that extra help, they were lifesavers. In World 1-2, jump over the bricks where the pipe that takes you outside is located. You can choose World 2, 3, or 4, but we all know everyone went just straight to 4. In World 4-2, you can warp again in the same location. Oh no! You can only go to World 5! It's like the designers knew we were going to figure this out. To get to World 8, you need to find a vine in the middle of World 4-2 and climb up. Then you can skip right to 8-1. There are, however, some other warps that were not planned as part of the game. In World 1-2, you can unlock a secret warp if you push through the bricks, taking you to the Minus World, an endless repeating underwater level. The Minus World is a bug that slipped through testing. The level isn't actually -1, simply the world marker is blank because there's no data for it. After all, it isn't supposed to be there. In the disk system version, there are 3 Minus Worlds. Access them the same way as the more famous Minus World, and off you go. The 3 levels are repeats of 5-3, 7-3, and 4-4, with different graphics and a lot of weird things showing up. When you finish World -3, the game ends and it's back to the title screen. But that's not all. There are even more unlockable levels that Nintendo never intended to put in the game, but nonetheless are there anyway. The following trick works only on the family computer or Model 2 NES. Start up Super Mario Bros. And begin playing. Rip the cartridge out and put the tennis cartridge in. Hit the reset button and start playing. After some time, pull the tennis cartridge out and put Super Mario Bros. Back in. Hit reset, press button B to select a world, and you'll find yourself at World 9-1, where everything is crazy and nothing is where it should be. But much like the other stages, the program is stuck using in-game elements that are already there, and it thinks it's just doing what it's supposed to do. So why does this happen? In short, the level data in Super Mario Bros. Is kind of in the same place where tennis keeps track of the score and whatever else is going on. So when you swap cartridges, not only is the Mario data retained, but you're adding to it with tennis, which then gets put back into Mario. Pushing the reset button doesn't clear the data in the cartridge. A lot of games would keep things like high scores or last stages played, even if you reset, but once you power off, it's gone forever. Now I know kids like to make up a lot of crazy stories that typically can't be proven, but the discovery of this World 9 actually prompted Shigeru Miyamoto to address the rumors. Very likely he was doing some stealth PR as a warning to players that this was not a good idea, and that if you fry your games, well, it's not his fault. However, this glitched World 9 did inspire Miyamoto to include a proper World 9 and beyond in the Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2. But it has to make you wonder, who was just randomly doing this to a brand new game, thinking it would do something? Whoever you are, or were, thank you for your service. Moving on to other things in the game that sound like schoolyard lies, you can jump over the flagpole and reach the other side. The easiest way is in World 3-3, if you can time your jump just right by using the highest platform. On the other side, however, nothing is there. If you move past the flagpole, you're stuck until the timer runs out. You can also activate a glitch in World 1-1 and go over the pole too. Carefully wait for this Koopa Troopa to fall off the edge. Jump in the air, and if you time it right, you'll land on him. Let him get back on his feet and walking again. Follow him to the flagpole and carefully time your jump again. Hitting the Koopa Troopa will send you over the top. Another glitch that sounds too good to be true is Small Fiery Mario. How is that possible? Another carefully timed jump in Bowser's Castle is all you need. As Fiery Mario, hit the axe and Bowser at the same time. You'll take damage but move on to the next world. Grab the next magic mushroom and Mario will shrink. Grab the next fire flower and suddenly, Small Mario can throw fireballs. This also works in the Japanese Super Mario Bros. Deluxe, but you have to take a hit, then immediately save and restart to activate it instead. In World 3-1, there's a way to earn over 100 lives. Time your jump with a Koopa Troopa on the steps before the flagpole. If you do this correctly, you will repeatedly jump, which will cycle through the point bonuses and then 1-ups. Be careful, because if you reach 128 lives, the game code turns over to 0, and it's an instant game over. Unlike some of the other secrets, this infinite 1-up was intentionally put into the game, though the life counter glitch was not. Furthermore, when you reach over 9 lives, the counter will change to a crown. The icon was decided by Miyamoto and his team as a special reward for super players that could break the double-digit barrier. The idea lives on today, as many Super Mario games have infinite 1-up tricks hiding in the game, and when you max out the counter, the crown will appear. So when you play Super Mario 3D World and rack up those 1,110 lives, you might think to yourself, awesome, just like in Mario 1. But now, when you see the crown, you'll always know it might look like a glitch, but it was meant to be there from the start. It goes without saying that Super Mario Bros. Is one of the most influential games of all time. But is it really the greatest ever? I think it's best reflected in a scene from the 2016 Olympics, when Japan, the host country for the next games in 2020, took the baton from the then current host country Brazil. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe came out of a green pipe wearing a Mario hat, and everyone applauded. In that moment, the cultural shorthand was clear. Not only that Japan comes bearing the gift of games, but that everyone watching around the world got the message instantly, without any words spoken. You could say that Super Mario Bros. Raised the bar for games, but really, it was the bar. What we call action games switched from clearing a single screen to moving left to right, jumping on things, getting power-ups, and saving some girl, the kingdom, or the world. Take any game after 1985, Mega Man, Monster Party, Rescue Rangers, Little Nemo, and I could go on forever. We might call them action platformers today, but from 1985 to 1995, these were called Mario games, without exception, all copying the template in one way or another. Sonic the Hedgehog, that's a Mario game too. Early PlayStation games, even before Super Mario 64, like Jumping Flash, were still referred to as Mario games. Afterwards too, thanks to the design choices of that game. That level of impact has never been repeated in any other genre, much less the impact that the action set had. Having one of those in the 1980s makes seeing a new game system today, without a pack-in game, without one that is also the face of the company and the best work available, feel like something lesser, that something is missing. It feels counterintuitive to the Christmases or birthdays so many of us had with Super Mario Bros., or later imitators of the formula, both on screen and packaged at retail. Today, with more games than ever, ones that no longer resemble what was around in the 1980s, it is a testament to what began in 1985. That's why Super Mario Bros. Stands as the greatest game of all time. After all, they are called Mario games for a reason.